There's been a long-standing comparison between the United States of America and Rome in the times of the Republic. These similarities are strikingly obvious in the physical structures that line the city, the dome of Capitol Hill, and the alabaster grand pillars that hold up our White House. Yet the resemblance runs deeper than that, into the culture and the creation of our political system. While the Romans succeeded in establishing a working republic, eventually it fell into dictatorship. Is there a possibility that our great democracy could fail us in the same way? To further understand the potential threat of a totalitarian government, let's take a walk through Rome on the streets of DC. To properly grasp the present, we must look into the past, to the foundation that our country was built upon. We begin in the year 509 BC with revolution, the political upheaval where the Romans rejected the rule of the kingdom and instead established a republic, giving power to the people. Realizing that no one man could rule them all, the Romans distributed power between three branches and gave each the authority to check the others. The Romans' monarchical branch was led not by a president, but by two councils who were members of Rome's exclusive patriarchal class and re-elected annually. Each council could veto the decision of the other, and all actions required the agreement of them both. The aristocratic branch created the Senate, with the senators who wrote the laws and were appointed for life terms by the councils. If these laws weren't vetoed by either council, they went before the legislative assemblies of the Democratic branch for acceptance or denial. The Democratic branch was the ultimate source of sovereignty for Rome and gave power to the common people. During the legislative assemblies, the plebeian class of the average citizens of Rome got to elect their rulers, decide whether to go to war, and pass the laws that the Senate had formulated. In the beginning of the Roman Republic, this system functioned efficiently. But all good things eventually come to an end. By 123 BC, the government of Rome was filled with corruption. The democratic process was failing, and money had become the main power in politics. Discontent and instability quickly fostered between the unequal class system. There were gang wars in the street, and the military had become too politicized to help. Using this turmoil, the wealthy leaders slowly gained authority, minimizing the say of the people. By 82 BC, political infighting was rampant, and Rome was in a crisis. In order to survive, the Senate appointed Lucius Cornelius Sulla as temporary dictator of the Roman Republic to stabilize the country and bridge the divide. Sulla used his completely unchecked power to put over 1,000 of his competing politicians to death. The fear of assassination loomed over the heads of the opposition and forced them to either comply or die. While Sulla eventually relinquished his title of dictator, the idea of democracy that Rome had been founded upon had been ruined. The legislative assemblies that were Rome's holy grail of sovereignty were eliminated, and the military was nationalized to be only loyal to the emperor. When Augustus died in 14 AD, the Republic of Rome died with him. For over 400 years, the people of Rome had been the guardians of peace and justice in the old Republic, before the dark times, before the empire. Social, economic, and political instability led Rome to disaster, but as Winston Churchill once said, the one thing we have learned from history is that we don't learn from history. While the founding fathers of the United States were writing our Constitution to act as the supreme law for the new America, they separated the power of the government into three branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. Each branch was specifically granted the right to check the power of the other two branches in certain ways. This was done to ensure that no one branch would threaten the integrity of the democratic process. It was this very type of system that had failed the Romans 2,000 years previously. Does this mean that the United States is on the same slippery slope? Although the United States of America has the top GDP in the world, there is still a very real possibility that this rich nation could collapse if power is given to the wrong people. Since our tumultuous tea-throwing beginnings in 1783, our country has changed exponentially. The Founding Fathers expected Congress to be the dominant branch, but the power of the executive branch has grown steadily over time. The authority of the executive branch expanded with the adoption of executive privilege, executive orders, and national security directives, which allow the president to enact some policies without interference from Congress. The checks and balance system has proved to be bureaucratic and slow, not nearly efficient enough to keep up with the speed of the 21st century digital era. Despite the inefficiencies of the government, the United States still has risen to stand among the top world powers. The U.S. has a great influence in the economy, market, and politics of other countries. America's military is clearly dominant, with the $700 billion spent each year and the nearly 1.5 million active duty personnel. This strength gives the U.S. significant power in the world standing, similar to Rome, whose military might allowed them to imperialize most of Europe. This supremacy could also be to blame for the nationalistic culture evident in both Rome and the US. Americans, as a people, feel a strong sense of self, a divine loyalty to the homeland, and intense patriotism. Every morning across the nation, school children place their hand over their hearts and pledge allegiance to the United States of America. We are proud to be Americans, and we make it quite clear. Some claim that this inflated sense of self will cause us to underestimate the capabilities of other nations and lead us to our own downfall. Our new president-elect himself has had a long history of extreme egotism about his own capabilities and his intellect. After the unprecedented 2016 election, political instability in the United States is at an all-time high. The country is divided, and post-election emotions are only escalating. With our new president-elect Trump, our precious democracy could be in more danger than ever. While he won't be beheading his opposers in the street like Sulla, Trump has already shown signs of demonizing those who disagree with his policies. He questions the patriotism of his foes, and he blames the national issues on their ideals. His accusation of his opposers during his campaign can be a significant indicator that this will only increase during the time of his presidency. As a businessman, Trump has shown his distaste for the rules and his willingness to break them. We can only imagine what he'll do now that he has the power of the state behind him. He can use this authority to reward the loyal followers and punish those who oppose him. After taking the Oval Office, Trump will have the opportunity to stack the Supreme Court while also having both houses of Congress majority Republican. This will allow him to push more legislation through Congress while also controlling the decision of the courts. Trump's use of fear-mongering about the Mexican rapists and Muslims should frighten the general population in a completely different way. He is fueling hatred among groups and pitting them against each other through his dehumanizing tyrants. Trump breeds social hostility that is dangerous to the unity of our country. While Rome and the United States share similar political structures, the United States has survived through a technical revolution and has seen more advancement in our short 200 years than the Iron Age Romans could ever dream of. The United States have changed as a people for the better, increasing the equality in our social classes. We ended slavery, gave women and minorities the right to vote while encouraging immigration. With a deep commitment to liberty, the USA has made great strides to accept our diversity of age, sex, gender, race, and sexual orientation of our people. Although we've progressed, with this new upcoming administration, is it possible that we too could fall into tyranny?